job. All right. So because we're talking about AI, we're lucky. Good friend of mine, Michael Parekh, came in because from a high level, that's all everybody wants to know about is AI. And so I asked Michael, who's been deep in AI for years, investing in chip companies. He ran Goldman's research back in the 90s and the first internet boom. And got so excited about AI a year ago. I didn't know he's a great writer, but about 6 months ago or a year ago, he started writing a free Substack. He hasn't moved it to Beehive yet, but he is. But he started writing a free Substack daily about what's happening in AI in English for everybody to see. But as usual, people don't like to dig in, but this is out there. Everybody can subscribe to his newsletter. I share it all the time. And really digestible daily, what's happening in the AI industry. So Mike, come on up. We're going to chat about AI for everybody. And then we'll close with the last four social leverage fund 4 companies, and then it ties. So we're right on schedule. All right, so that's a complicated chart, but we're gonna go through it. We're gonna go through it, but first we'll refer to test. Yeah, there won't be a test, but you could run the test on ChatGPT. Okay, first question, because I want to keep it in. Is Nvidia overhyped?
Is AI overhyped?
Is Nvidia overhyped? AI is fucking overhyped. Is Nvidia overhyped?
Nvidia is just barely getting started, is the thing. I mean, yes, there will be financial ups and downs, but if you look at technology companies through all the other major technology waves, PC, internet, cloud, mobile, we've always had a tech stack like this, right? Where we go from, this is complicated, I know, but in general, you have hardware and networks at the bottom, you have software and middleware in the middle. A lot of the companies we've seen this afternoon have been that, Alpaca, etc., FinChat. And then up top is the Holy Grail. This is what everyone wants to move to, which is the application. The applications are in box 6 up top. And the tech stacks that you've seen have always been vertical. For 30 years, when I ran Goldman's internet research, this was the framework we started to use. And I said, look, take the tech stack vertical, flip it in a staircase. And the reason for that is you have to look at it over time. So the x-axis is time. It could be weeks, months. In this case, think about it over the next few years. And on the top left is what everyone else in this room thinks about all the time: revenues, margins, market share, valuations, public, private. All of that stuff is on the left. This is a very abstract chart. It's meant for discussion. But to your question on Nvidia just happens to be every tech wave. There's a gold rush and there is a pickaxe moment. Everyone wants the shovels and so on. Nvidia is the company this time, but it's not transient. AI without Nvidia's graphical processing units would just be 2 letters in the English language that are non-adjacent. The theories around AI have been around for over 15, 20 years. To do the math in a parallel processing way, you needed GPUs. Jensen Huang, who's the founder CEO of Nvidia, has been working on for 30 years. He invented the GPU category for gaming, and then very quickly, about 15 years ago, pivoted to this machine learning stuff. He's got margins right now, as people in this room know, 85% and higher. Okay, those are the kinds of margins you see for Microsoft in the PC cycle up in the top 6 after 10, 15 years in the business. Okay, so why? Because they're in shortage. The chips are in shortage. There's only one major fab in the world. TSMC makes them. Nvidia is and yesterday or 2 days ago, you put up a post quoting Altimeter that said, "Oh, this is overvalued, blah, etc." And that's a snapshot in time. The thing about all of this AI stuff is that the trend is just getting started. We're at the beginning of the beginning. We're not even in the PC terms. A lot of this crowd is way too young. We're not even in 1981. 1982 was the IBM PC, Microsoft MS-DOS. That's what kicked off the PC thing. Internet, 95, Netscape moment. Netscape went public in 95, it kicked off. Nvidia today is basically in boxes 2 and 3, but the key difference that I want to leave with this room is that they have meticulously built a free open source software framework called CUDA that over 2.5 million developers, everyone who's rushing to do anything with NVIDIA and NVIDIA cards has to use. That's a lock-in. And that lock-in is going to stay for several years, even when GPUs are available in much bigger volume. And yes, there are dozens, if not hundreds of companies, startups, and AMD, Intel, everyone going after the GPU market.
So I think back to Cisco. So we heard the same story, you guys and Mary Meeker and Henry Blodgett. We had this, you were in it, you were an analyst, you were running Goldman's research. What everybody got wrong about Cisco was, and they were peaked at 750 valuation. Everybody was like, Cisco can't lose. Well, their customers end up not being able to pay their bills. Is that what's different here? Is the customers have so much cash they can't go broke? Like, so what could go wrong?
Good, lots of things can go wrong. So
right, because Cisco peaked at 750.
Cisco
and
everybody but Cisco was an incumbent technology. The networking equipment they had, I spent a lot of time in those middle two boxes, because some people made Juniper. There are number of companies that created entirely new networking equipment that was TCP/IP based, and they lasted. To your question, ephemeral customers, yes, Nvidia right now they're the beneficiary because the world wants their chips. But the biggest customers are the 6 or 7 or 8 companies that each have $1 trillion plus market caps. Look, Meta has spent close to $60 billion on Metaverse over the last 5 years, and no one missed it. No investor missed it, other than, what did you? They have nothing to show for it. This quarter, they just said we're going to spend $40 billion. So the spend to do LLMs is front loaded. In the internet case, it was back end loaded. When I ran Goldman in internet research from 95 to 2005, the telecom industry raised $1 trillion to do the telecom backend to connect the world with TCP/IP. $1 trillion. By 2002, when the internet bubble crashed, 2% of that was being used. And so that is what people worry, that all these data centers are getting built, et cetera, 2%, and that can absolutely happen. Why it will not happen is the kind of presentations we've seen this afternoon. Everyone in this room is basically saying, oh, we have a great business, but we have all these things, Axon. We have all this database. He said he had more video than in Netflix in a category. Okay, yes, there's regulation bound, but guess what? If he could buy 50, 100,000 H100s, not at 30,000, at 10,000, which will happen because the prices will come down, he can get through the regulatory hurdles.
And Law and Order
he can
episodes.
Create the most interesting thing in this chart is actually two unique things versus previous charts. Number one is that box number 4, which is data, which is what every company we've heard this afternoon has talked about. Data. Data is not just the starting point; it's actually the ending point of what people are going to get out of this, and that's a very unique ingredient we've never had. And so for that reason, I don't think this is ephemeral for Nvidia, because they were going to do. And then the second one is the reinforcement curves.
Okay. So again, he writes about this every day, so he gets excited. But I get excited about other things.
And by the way, sorry,
God bless Michael.
This is all explained on my thing in a lot more detail. But again, not a quiz.
So as much as Nvidia is maybe not overhyped, how overhyped is Sam Lessin? And when he throws around the 7 trillion number, you sat around and we sat around and had a long discussion about this last night. The whole semiconductor industry is 500 billion.
Correct.
So he's throwing out 7 trillion. So guess who's overhyping?
Well, what he is saying is that, look, this thing is part of a broader. I have a broader deck. If anyone wants, email me at mpgoog@gmail.com and I'll send it to you. But the thing is, the AI thing is unique because 60 to 70 years of computing is essentially being redone probabilistically. So when Sam Altman is talking about 7 trillion, yes, number one, he is overhyping because he's talking his book, and he wants regulators around the world to protect him and not and build friction for all the other others behind him. But he is not overhyping it in that all the data centers, everything are going to have to be utterly redone technically. Just like telecom infrastructure had to be redone with TCP/IP, same thing's happening here. That's going to take 10, 15 years. Yes, it will take. If you look at Jensen, who I would give more credence to, he's talking about $1 trillion for redoing data centers, which is in box 3 over there, redoing data centers for AI optimization. So $1 trillion over, let's call it 5 years. The other thing I'll just highlight is everyone in this room, has invested at various times, from PCs to, mainframes to mini computers to PCs and smartphones. That took 35, 40 years. What we're looking at, Sam Altman, large language models, and Jensen, huge amount of chips and data centers, that's the mainframe. We're living through the mainframe aspect of AI. In 5 years, we're going to go from big AI to small AI. Well, what does that mean? That means all these models, a lot of the models that being run on the cloud are going to run on your phones, which already have tremendous amount of parallel processing GPUs, and that is accelerating. For the last 5, 6 years, everyone in this room and your families, you didn't buy computers maybe every 3, 4 years. You didn't upgrade your phone 3, 4 years. In the next 5, 10 years, we're going to do that every year, because the chips are going to. No, because the chips, the chips and the memory on your phone are going to be optimized for AI to run locally. So the models that Sam had, GPT-3, that needed a whole bunch of cloud infrastructure 2 years ago, next year are going to run on your phone, and that's why so he's overhyping it for a reason, but he's not wrong directionally.
Okay. Hyperscale. So I love Google mainly because you and Ram and just my own instincts. Hyperscalers like Google and AWS are building their own custom silicon.
Yeah.
Not to go geeky. Does this eat into Nvidia, and or does it matter?
It in the picture that we're looking at in the next 3 to 5 years, the amount of demand that I'm talking about in terms of people having to redo data centers, no. Nvidia had 500 million. They sold 550,000 H100s, which are the top GPUs last year. That's about 2 million or so this year, maybe 4 to 5 million next year. What we're talking about on Google, and yes, Google, Microsoft, they're all building their own chips. But most of those chips are for their internal consumption to run their own businesses. Mm-hmm. So just like Axon was here talking about using their data and so on, Google has 2 billion Gmail users. They want to try, basically, they're going to run AI on their internal chips for that stuff. Yeah. And then they're going to use the Nvidia chips for the external stuff. Why? Because all the developers are building all the applications further up the stack.
So to help an Axon potentially, they'll compete there potentially to help an Axon potentially.
So Axon, Axon is a special case. So that I don't want to get, but okay. Axon, they could do it with custom chips, but no, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, they're all building, and Meta, they're all building their own chips, but they're mostly the chips that they're building, they're going to use for their internal apps more, because it's more efficient to run. It gets really geeky in terms of running which LLMs you run on for what applications. None of those chips are going to be available for you and I to go order with our credit card. We can buy it as a service if we want, but we won't want to, because our developers, 15 or 20 in all over the world, are not going to want to learn the languages to use that stuff. Yeah. And they'll use CUDA, which is Nvidia.
Which is Nvidia. Okay. So, and by the way, thanks, Ron, for helping me write these questions to keep it in English. Will AI level up productivity? What is the hype and what is real? Will AI level up productivity?
AI will level up productivity over a 10, 15, 20-year period. At Goldman in the 90s, I spent a lot of time with our economists after Greenspan made the rational exuberance comment in 97, 98. Bill Dudley, who was our senior economist and then went on to be the New York Fed, he and I spent like a couple of years in the late 90s. He was like, where is the productivity of the internet? And I said, I went and looked at how economists do their jobs. We didn't have ChatGPT. I couldn't do a quick search. And I had to learn economics at the way they did it. Long story short is there's a 5 to 10 year lag when technology has an impact, et cetera. It doesn't show up in the data that we look at. So yes, right now, Goldman Sachs's top economist Jan Hatzius says in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see a $7 trillion increase in global GDP. So 112 trillion, so 7 trillion, so seven. He's basically forecasting 7% over the economic growth, not productivity. Yes, a lot of this stuff is deflationary, right? We're going to need fewer people to do a lot of things that they do today. But that's all the what New York Times wants to run on the cover. The reality is that freed up time. That doesn't mean we're going to let go people. Yes, some people may lose their jobs, but we're going to hire a crap load more people. I remember when Adobe came up with the PostScript printer after the Mac came out in the 80s, everyone said no one's going to use paper. And the paper companies the last 30 years have never looked back. They can't print enough paper. And that's the same thing that's going on here. We've seen this with every technology.
Great. What? So as much hype as there is, it's real.
It's real, but be patient. There are going to be financial volatility up and down that that we've always seen. It's going to be faster because the changes are happening faster. The other thing I just want to underline for this audience is that the reason Sam Altman is that crazy, not crazy, sounds that exuberant, is because he is relying on something called AI scaling laws. You can Google it. I've written a lot about it. And basically what that is and the same thing, Jensen is doing the same thing, which is basically, we all know in this room Moore's law, which Gordon Moore kind of postulated not as a law, but just as an observation in the 60s. And we've had that consistent for the last 60 years, which is semiconductors are going to double in performance every couple of years, and pricing is going to go down 50%. Sam Altman, OpenAI's GPT-2 to GPT-3 to 4, and now 5 and 6, which are not announced but being tested, and out soon. 5 this year, and probably this year, and 6 in the next couple of years. They are improving right now because of the parallelism of Nvidia's GPUs and so on, at least 30 times every 2 years. Pricing cost is down at least 10 to 20 times. Right now, on specific cases, GPT-3 is 1/60th the cost of GPT-4 already in 1 year. So what I'm saying is that these are huge. We've not seen these kinds of effects. And what does that mean? That means anyone in this room, all the founders are investing on this stuff. Don't go too aggressive on buying so much. You will have to redo most of the stuff because the technology is going to change very, very quickly, and you're going to have to redo the stuff.
Yeah, like I said, don't chase. Will we see? It seems obvious. A humanoid. This is for Chris Camillo. Will we see humanoid robots transform life in the next 5 years?
Jensen,
like beyond a Manscaped is transformative, but something better.
Well, Manscaped will have a robot that does the stuff for you, right?
Thank
you.
No,
it's a
I'm excited.
Service, yeah.
That got me excited. Okay. So what will we see
humanoid robots. So the next buzzword, one of the next buzzwords to start paying attention to, and the Jensens and the Altmans are already talking about it, is foundation robotics. It's taking LLM technology and applying it to machines, whether it's warehouse robots in factories and shipping and so on, to humanoid robots. And the idea is that the same principles can transform the way robots are trained. Robots have been trained in a heuristic way, in a programmed way for the last 20 years. That's utterly changing. Just like self-driving cars, Elon's FSD-12 is all based on LLMs, and 11 and before was all on pre-programmed traditional software. So yes, humanoid robots are going to be cool, but they will to be actually useful, especially the ones we use in our home, other than a Roomba type of thing, 5 to 10 years.
Okay. So the big question to me is who really wins? Let's talk about energy. When does the space race for nuclear energy kick off between U.S. and China? Is that something you can talk about?
Yeah, I just did a post yesterday on it.
Okay.
Yeah, so right now, because of the geopolitical relationship between U.S. and China, it is a moonshot type rocket to the moon, Sputnik, etc. Everything U.S. government or U.S. companies particularly are doing, the Chinese are copying in a few weeks and showing. I put up a post yesterday about one of the most fascinating things from OpenAI in the last couple of months is this text-to-video program called Sora. It's not available to anybody, but the demos are out there.
It's only short little clips.
Yeah, but it's like I remember spending time with Steve. I'm not throwing up names, but Steve Jobs, when he did Pixar, he was trying to do an IPO on Pixar. I had a chance to meet him, and he was the nicest he's ever been to me at that point, where but it was short clips. Pixar, they had short clips. In 2 years, they did a feature film which won Oscars and so on. Technology moves. When you're going 60 times, you're going to see fully generated feature-length movies in not too long. So yes, there's short clips. But my point on the Sora thing was the Sora technology. For if anyone's interested in the geeky stuff, I can walk in. It's really crazy tech. It's like fusing a lot of these curves, and it's really, really impressive what they did. And I spent a lot of time with the engineers doing it. That China copied it within a week, frame for frame. Okay, it all stops out. So yes, and that I think overall is a net positive for the industry, because everyone is. Hey, look, my career last 25 years, I've spent a lot of time advising the tech companies, big, large. And AI do a lot of that. The last year or so, I just the government. I mean, DC is calling and saying let's because they're trying to figure this stuff out, and this is not their. So the government is focused, and that means, and every country wants their own AI industry. Saudi Arabia just committed $100 billion for AI. Most of it is going to be wasted. But guess what? Andreessen Horowitz is going to get $20 billion to invest in U.S. tech companies. So everyone in this room is going to be able to go to Andreessen, and it's going to be Saudi money. And UAE is doing the same thing.
All right. So anyways, the group was talking all night last night. Let's open it to just a couple questions. Brent.
Correct. No.
So he said Brent's asking about energy, like there's the problem here is not the customers can't pay, is how do you power this?
Yep. Energy is the first line in box number 1 at the bottom. AI power. To your point, it is a new ingredient, and as computers do this 60x performance thing, they need. It is very brute force. The energy I can go to the. We're spending stupid amounts of energy to do what we have to do. So yes, demand for energy for AI is going to now go on top of demand for increased energy, both generation and distribution for EVs. Remember we went from Tesla 2 or 3% of all cars in the US are EVs, but no one's buying. The last year and a half, people are not buying as much because the range anxiety. They don't want to charge in the charging infrastructure.
Yeah, they're buying Hondas.
They're buying hybrids, which do gas. To your question, yes, energy. All the analysis right now shows that on a straight line, the power consumption from AI could be anywhere. So power consumption pre-AI was about 2 or 3%. It's probably 5 or 6% up to, I've seen estimates as high as 20%. The problem with the higher end of the number is that that assumes an algebraic relationship on today's mainframe AI technology. If AI, let's say 20, 30, 40% of the inference load, the lower loop on that chart, shifts to local devices and local computers, etc., that takes that 20% down to 5%. So in other words, yes, the next 3 or 4 years, you're going to see CEOs, heads of state, everyone saying we need more power investment, and we do. But in 4 to 5, 6 years, if the inference shift happens the way I'm thinking, it's not going to be as dramatic as we expected today. Is the best guess. We will get through that hump. But yes, you will have gating. The one good news on data center, because we're talking about powering data centers, it's a different problem than powering all the charging stations for EVs. We need 15 to 30,000 charging stations, which means you have to take the power that you're building more of and distribute it all around the country. That's a That's a 10x bigger problem. To take power generation and what's going on, Microsoft, Amazon, all of those guys are basically spending gazillion, 10 billions each right now this year on building data centers that's close to the massive energy sources in the country. Amazon just signed a deal with a company called Talon. It's the 6th largest nuclear reactor in the south that will generate about 2.5 gigawatts. Amazon signing up for 1 gigawatt. So it's going to be a billion-dollar data center. So the good news on that. So the one thing, other than in our political system, there are only a handful of issues that have seen bipartisan support. One was Democrats
TikTok.
and Republicans. TikTok. Let's ban TikTok. The only other thing that's really shifted in the last 5 years, Democrats and Republicans. Okay, nuclear power is okay. So nuclear is the answer. It won't get us through the hump, but through a lot of the efficiency. And by the way, the other thing, the efficiencies are probably going to happen a lot faster than is in these numbers right now. So yes, we will have shortages, and just like we're talking about GPU shortages last year, this year, we're going to be talking about power shortages for AI for the next 2 years at least.
From a dummy's perspective, I think the good news is that as much as we hate FANG or Magnificent Seven, at least there's 7 companies trying to solve this, not one.
It's 7 companies, so that's
or 10.
Yeah, it's 10. It's
in
yeah,
China.
I have a list. It's over about 20 if you look at the whole world. China has their own equivalent number, but yeah, the competition on this time around is and the willingness to invest ahead of all the monetization is unprecedented.
The problem with Chinese AI is you get hungry 20 minutes later. That's just great. Mike likes my jokes. So this is why I said with AI, there's so much hype because I can talk to Michael all the time and see what's happening. He's been investing in chip kinds. The thing that makes me so excited when I saw Mike writing the Substack was like he disappeared for 5 years while crypto was happening. Crypto as a Goldman guy and as a money guy and as an enemy of the state that you are, and has a secret handshake that he's told a few people if you get him hammered. Doug, I have the shake. What's fascinating about this is you didn't care about crypto. So tell, as an investor who chases shiny objects, all of us, and you love shiny objects too. What was it about crypto that just said, "I'll wait," and that allowed you to get the big pitch here?
Crypto, I love the base technology things around blockchain, etc. And it's been 15 years, and we're still looking for a mainstream app around crypto, other than buy Bitcoin and make be very rich if you bought it 10 years ago. The thing with crypto is that was very unusual, and everyone in this room knows it. Is it's for the first time in terms of an innovative technology, was the fundamental technology was totally twined in with greed around trading coins and token and NFTs and all this other stuff. So that took 70-80% of the innovation around trading this stuff. That was not creating utility. I mean, I helped Microsoft or Goldman Sachs helped Microsoft buy Hotmail, which was the first generic email company. And you talked about email thing. And my point is, email within it was a switch in the late 80s. If you wanted email, there were 2 options: go back to university or go work for the government. By 93, 94, 95, anyone who wanted an email address could get one. And anyone who wanted it, it was Hotmail, and then was Yahoo Mail and so on. But it was there in our hands. With crypto, 10, 12 years later, there's nothing my mother-in-law can do with the thing other than put it in her ETF.
She could screw your father-in-law.
She could do that, exactly, but but that's in her Robinhood account, and she's bought a bunch of things, and she runs away.
The lesson is you can't, you have to read and be careful what you do, and that's kind of why we've avoided, other than the emerging manager fund, doing a lot of crypto. All right, so one more question, Ev.
So it sounds like there's about to be a bull market in hardware, right? So Apple is not sold.
Well, Dell's been running.
Right, so it sounds like we all like shutting down. To make money, we should be looking at some of the hardware that's going to be continually replaced on an annual basis, unlike today where we're holding these things for 5 years.
Yeah, exactly. So Apple's going to be a beneficiary, and so is, by the way, all hardware companies. The first three boxes are going to be Apple of the Magnificent Seven is the one that's probably the one most poo-pooed right now on AI because they've not been visible. It's not the Apple way. Watch for June this year. WWDC is the developer conference. Tim Cook will finally say the word AI several times out loud. He's not done it for the last 2 or 3 years. He's rumored to be cutting a deal with either Google and OpenAI, or to license their. Remember, Apple has one of the most amazing assets that has not been yet harnessed for AI, which is over 2 billion people use Apple products. That phone, if it's an iPhone 15, has 18 billion transistors. Nvidia's H100 chip, which sells for $30,000, has 208 billion transistors. My point is, it's not about the transistor count. That thing can run 2-year-old GPT as efficiently as anything in the cloud. So yes, you will be buying phones from Apple. And by the way, Qualcomm is making AI chips now, like aggressive. Everyone is doing it. And I've written about it in earlier this. Anyway, so the next 3 or 4 or 5 years, yeah, you'll be upgrading smartphones and PCs like we used to in the 80s and 90s. In the 80s and 90s, Goldman, we took Dell public in 88. People were upgrading Dell computers every 2 years. Think about when the last time you bought a laptop or a computer for your office. You didn't upgrade it for 4 or 5 years. It's good enough. That's changing. That's on the hardware that's sitting in front of you. But then there's a crap load of hardware in the back, which is what we're talking about, the Nvidias and Nvidia last quarter sold $13 billion of cables, not GPU chips, not networking equipment, cables. Because the supercomputer clusters they're putting together need these super crazy 2,000 miles of cable for an average data center, and it needs to be certain specs and so on. So yeah, hardware totally for the next 3 or 4 5. Say again? So, I've not watched Bernstein saying, but everyone's look. The street has generally been very much leaning into all the hardware companies for pretty much this year. The earnings season is just finishing up. No one's, other than Meta for a teeny bit, no one blinked an eye. When Google said we're going to spend 10, 12, 15 billion dollars, Microsoft 14, no blinking an eye. Meta, they said a $40 billion number. I think that Meta had actually run up ahead of the. I'm not a day-to-day stock expert, but yeah, Meta had run up. So I think it was a little bit of profiting. Meta, by the way, is the most interesting, other than the big hyperscaler things, because Meta's business is not hardware. Yet they have the hottest open source large language model in Llama 3, which Zuckerberg just announced. Which, by the way, every cloud company is going to basically take, package, and resell to Goldman Sachs and everybody else to create customized stuff. And so Meta is going to be beneficiary of that. And Meta also turned on Meta AI, which is their version of ChatGPT, but it's now available instantly as of last week since Zuck turned it on to over 3 billion users of Instagram, WhatsApp, and so people. My point is, end users are using this in a massive way. Sam Altman's ChatGPT still has about 100, depending on how you count it through Microsoft, about 100 to 200 million users per month. Meta has 3 billion using the Meta AI and the Llama 3.
So anyways, Michael, hang around, but just all the stuff that I'm talking about today with the team is, we talked to Mike, we talked to all these people, we read everything. This is why last year, November was 22 when we did this in April. ChatGPT was just starting. This is why last year I was saying, don't panic, don't chase. This is why this year I'm saying it's a great time to invest. If I was going to invest, I think public companies are fine. And if you're not doing public companies, seed stage is the only place. I worry about the middle. Worry about the dummies in the middle, overpricing things, screwing things up for all us founders. We all have to be smarter, give ourselves optionality, because if you don't want to do what we're doing, the public markets are probably fine because you got liquidity and you have these great companies.
Right now, the public markets are fine only because, as I said, the AI is going through its mainframe stage, which is super expensive, and the biggest companies that can play at scale are the handful of names we've been talking about.
What I meant more was like, putting your money in late stage growth. I mean, if
Oh,
you
yeah,
don't
yeah.
want to do seed and build businesses, you can blow your brains out in the public markets. You're
Yeah.
buying great companies, but everything in the middle worries me because people don't know what they're doing.
You know, I understand that distinction. The one thing I'll just say is, in the next 3 to 4 years, just like in enterprise software and all these other waves before us, typically when a new technology comes that can be horizontally used across industries, about 85% are are add-on applications. You're basically taking that technology and adding it onto. It's like what Microsoft did. They had Windows, they had Office, they created this thing called Copilot, and they're running. You know, the street estimates are anywhere from $500 billion to $1 trillion dollars over the next 10 years, or just on these add-ons, the recurring add-on revenues. And then there are native AI companies, right? So OpenAI with ChatGPT is it's a native app. It didn't exist before. Google, when Gemini is basically taken Gemini and added it on to Google search, 10 billion searches a day, they're pretty much as good as OpenAI's searches. So all I'm saying is, for this crowd, when you're talking about startups, mid-growth, and all founders at any stage, the biggest opportunity is going to be the add-on of AI to your products and services.
Yeah.
So you want to be smart about that. And yes, if you really want to then say, oh, we have this Axon, we have this crazy data, we can really create an AI native company around this data. Yeah, there can be an Axon AI. He probably, if he did a 10%.
Well, that's why I love FinChat. You can go and look at these legacy businesses that no one realizes yet that have this explosive growth if you understand how KPIs are broken out.
I'll put it another way. If you look at Goldman's economist, Yatcha, saying, okay, on a 100 trillion global economy, there's 7% growth over 10 years. I would wager every company that we've heard about today, and any company that we're talking about, should have an opportunity, and this is very ad hoc, to add at least 5 to 10% growth on a 3 to 5 year basis on their business of AI add-ons or AI native, on top of what they're doing. Yes, there's going to be some cannibalization on their existing business, so you'll have to adjust for that. But in general, this is additive. This stuff is additive because the functionality offered by AI is very different than the way we've done software before this. This is, whether you call it reasoning, whether you call it creativity, it's basically harnessing everything we've done as humans and learning from that through probabilistic statistics.
All right. Well, thank you, Michael. Everybody. I'll share. We're lucky to have you. Thank you. And now we're going to go back to the real